It's the Full Court Press with Eric Franson and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Throws, ends yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Full Court Press. No false starts today. Jason Walker here with you on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. Also streaming online, the 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Thank you so much for tuning in. That or you can listen to the podcast afterward online, posted on 1069thefan.com. I think we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those things. I don't use those, but I know most people do. But thank you again for listening. Lots of stuff to go over today. Some of it current news. Some of it's just backlog stuff. We may end up pushing it to later. Just because some of it's Utah State football related. I had an article that came out on CashValleyDaily.com today. You can go read that. It's kind of it's first part of a 3-part series talking about Utah State football, just kind of snapshots of the offense, defense, and special teams. Just going over position strength, kind of reviewing a little bit of how national outlets, I specify, Phil Steele's Preview Magazine and the Athlon Sports Preview Magazine, how they feel about certain position groups of Utah State. I give my own analysis. I tend to be a little more optimistic than I think those national outlets are, particularly on a couple position groups, at least for the offense. But like I said, I gave my thoughts. So you can read those there. May end up talking about it today. May push it to later days, depending on how today's show goes. But some of the key news of today, Jordan Clarkson. I didn't think he was going to opt into his player option. I told several people as such. They asked, "You think Jordan Clarkson is going to opt in?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." Didn't mean that I didn't think Jordan Clarkson was going to come back to the Jazz, because an extension was always possible. Decline the player option, sign an extension. That happens. It's actually happening to Herb Jones, I think, of the New Orleans Pelicans. They're declining his team option and are likely going to sign an extension. Sometimes it'll happen with player options. So I thought, okay. Clarkson, and he could end up leaving, but could decline his player option and stay with the Jazz. But he's opting into his player option. He's opting in to the $14.2 million player option for this year. Of course, that could still mean that, a couple of things. It could mean the Jazz are going to sign him to an extension. Or it could mean that the Jazz are going to trade him. They could sign him for the player option. In fact, that's what you heard at the top of the hour. James Harden opting into his player option with the intent to leave, have a trade, go somewhere else. So that's certainly a possibility. Clarkson obviously being a little less public about it. Other news, kind of big one is things. This is kind of a slow aggregate, but now we kind of have settled on 4 different former Utah State basketball players are set to compete in this year's NBA Summer League. So we'll go over each of those. You can also talk about, with Jordan Clarkson opting in, where do the Jazz potentially end up? Like, how do you think this season is going to go? The roster is not set. There will be changes. There will be some players released and or traded. Partly because the Jazz are over the roster cap. Now, granted, they could still actually sign more players because you're allowed to have more players during training camp. So players getting released may not happen until October or later in July. But there will be a roster change eventually. But we know most of it. Like 90% of the roster is probably here. So can we start projecting where the Jazz are going to end up? If we know most of their key players, what are things going to look like? And then potentially, there's just something I saw on ESPN today. I was browsing, and it was ESPN just doing, a typical summer fluff. Every NBA team's best free agent acquisition since 2010. And I thought their answer for the Jazz was, certainly top 3, but they kind of missed the mark on the most obvious free agent acquisition. We'll get to that later. But just going back to Jordan Clarkson and him coming back, I think it's a good thing for the Jazz. I know there's other people who maybe they were hoping the Jazz were going to get somebody better on the free agent market, which this year's free agent market was not the year for the Jazz to go chasing. There are good free agent targets for some teams. They just don't fit with what the Jazz want. You're looking at older veterans, guys who are maybe going to be a little expensive. Granted, I think this year contracts are going to be lower because teams are clamming up in terms of how much money they're shelling out because we talked about it yesterday with the new collective bargaining agreement. Salary cap is absolutely shrinking down on teams, and there are more punishments for spending more money. So teams are going to be hesitant to spend a lot more money and give a lot more money long term. But still, it's going to cost money to get, Fred VanVleet, Kyrie Irving, a lot of these other players that are out there, the top end of the free agent class. And this isn't, while it's not a bad year at all for the Jazz to take on money. I've said that before. It's not a great idea to spend a lot of money on a 29, 30, 31-year-old veteran. So it's not really a great year for the Jazz to go out free agent hunting. Bringing in a guy like John Collins, overpaid at this point based on his production and career trajectory, but it's worthwhile money for getting a guy who maybe you can turn his career trajectory around. And I know Jordan Clarkson is a bit older, so it makes it sound weird that I say, it's not a good time to be giving a lot of money to veterans. But Jordan Clarkson is a guy who's already in the building. You were already paying. He was already factoring into that. And it's the fact that he's a fan favorite who's been around the club for a while. So it's a little different than going out and chasing guys to try and make this team better. So this wasn't the year for the Jazz to go out in free agency. And so that makes, bringing in Jordan Clarkson, bringing in John Collins, filling your cap space, with these types of players is going to benefit the Jazz potentially more long-term than going out and chasing the stars of what is, to be frankly, not a very well star-studded free agent class. Like, the guys at the top are, like I said, Fred VanVleet, Kyrie Irving. And while I like Fred VanVleet, he's probably not coming to Utah, and you don't want to touch Kyrie Irving with, you don't want to touch Kyrie Irving with a 100-foot pole. He is toxic to any franchise he goes to. So Jordan Clarkson opting in. Now, just to kind of go over the salary cap situation for the Jazz, I've been trying to figure this out because the things that I've seen have been confusing. I'm not one of these capologists. I probably should, learn that stuff. That way it can be a little more informative. I guess this is part of it, just learning as best I can. But right now, the Jazz, so they have 16 players under full-time NBA contracts. They do have, I think, at least, they signed one two-way player, one new two-way player. They're allowed 3 two-way players now, actually. It used to be you only got 2 of them. Now they're going to get 3. So they might have the 3 two-way players. But they have 16 players on their current roster, or at least, John Collins isn't technically on the current roster. He's officially will join the Jazz on the 6th of July. But accounting for him, we know he's incoming. The Jazz will have 16 players on their roster. And they have to have 15 by the start of the NBA season. Now, with all 16 of those, the Jazz would have about $7.5 million in cap room. Not a ton of room to sign somebody, and granted, you don't have any roster spots anyway. But the thing is, they have a few guys on non-guaranteed contracts. Chris Dunn, Luka Samanik, Luka's is actually partially guaranteed. I think $700,000 is partially guaranteed. And also Vernon Carey Jr. If the Jazz released all three of those players, they'd free up about another $7 million. So the Jazz right now, with a slightly over, slightly more than they need, number of players. They have 16 players on a 15-man roster. They have $7 million in cap space. If they waive three of the guys who they don't necessarily have to pay, if they waive them by, I think Dunn and Carey are both by like October 23rd, and I think Semanik is by July 18th. If they waive them by those dates, then most of that money goes away. Jazz free up about $7 million. So at most, the Jazz can put together $14 million in cap space. Of course, if they did that, then they'd have, 2 more roster spots to fill. So maybe they could do that. And that's where you could potentially see some things change for the Jazz. Maybe not necessarily specifically just waiving and then signing a free agent. Maybe they trade. Maybe they trade these guys to teams looking to cut some roster space. And then you allow those teams to waive and they get off the money. So Jazz can certainly make some moves. There's ways that they can generate more room on their roster without, having dead money on their books. And there's ways they can clear up cap room to sign maybe one more decent player, particularly a point guard. Because that's like the one thing this roster is lacking, especially with Jordan Clarkson coming back and tying up some of that cap room. The Jazz still lack a point guard. They have guards who can pass, who can rack up assists, but seem to lack the true playmaking chops that you want out of your point guard. It's like Jordan Clarkson, I think last year he was averaging somewhere around 5 assists. Chris Dunn over the last 12 or so games was averaging like 6.5 assists. Well, I think almost 7 assists per game. I think I wrote it down in some notes a few days ago. Somewhere around 6.3 assists per game. Talon Horton-Tucker over the last 19 games was averaging 6 assists per game. So you have guys that can rack up assists, but I don't necessarily know if they're great playmakers. And you don't want to rely on them to be your point guard long term. The Jazz were letting Chris Dunn and Talon Horton-Tucker be the point guards at the end of last year because they weren't trying in the last 20 or so games. They were sitting Lauri Markkanen for most of that time. They sat Colin Sexton for the entirety of the post All-Star break. And they sat Jordan Clarkson for most. I think I already said that. Clarkson, Markkanen, Colin Sexton, they all sat. So they were fine then, but this is where now the Jazz are trying to maybe push a little more towards contention. They're not going all in. Otherwise, they'd be looking at actually going into free agency and chasing some guys. But you would like to have at least one point guard on your roster that you believe can be a run-the-offense type point guard. Be able to have a primary ball handler who you know will make the right decisions. This guy like Talon Horton-Tucker, Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, not always relying on them to make the best decision in terms of being a passing point guard. Guys like Sexton and Clarkson, you can rely on them to score pretty well, but you don't just want a score-first point guard being your playmaking point guard. So we'll see what the Jazz end up doing with that free agency. But the question then kind of turns toward, all right, well, how good can the Jazz be? How good can the Jazz be this next season? And if you guys want to text into the show, give your suggestions. How good can the Utah Jazz be next year? If their roster, as of now, doesn't really change, if they don't make any major additions, don't make any major trades, again, there's going to be some shuffling, but let's assume this is pretty much the roster. That the starting 5 is found on this roster and most of the 9-man rotation. At least 8 players in the eventual 9-man rotation are currently on this team. You text in 435-339-0321. So last year's record, 37-45. The Jazz got off to a really hot start. But then, and they kind of fell off after the first 12, 13 games. I think they started 10-3. And then by the All-Star break, they were 29-31. So they'd fallen below 500. After the All-Star break, they went 8-14. So pre-All-Star break, they had a winning percentage of .483, so just under 500. Post-All-Star break, that was .363. So they went from winning just under half their games to just under a third, or just over a third. And, you know, the reason I make that distinction is that's before and after Mike Conley. But the problem with making that, you know, raw comparison is, well, you can also say that's just about before and after having Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton. Because Lauri played like half the games post-All-Star break. He played 12 of the 22 games. Jordan Clarkson played 3 of the 22 games. Colin Sexton played none of them. Like I said, you were starting Talon Horton-Tucker at point guard. Chris Dunn, a guy they just about picked up off the streets. A guy whose NBA career looked like it was just about over. Pick him up and threw him out there in bulk minutes. So it's hard to say exactly how good or bad that post-All-Star team was. Because if you just took that, 8-14, win percentage, that 8-14 record, multiply that over a 82-game season, pulling up a calculator right now, that's a 29-win team, hair under 30 wins. But again, you're going to have Lauri Markkanen for most of this next season. You're going to have Jordan Clarkson, presumably for most of the season. You're going to have Colin Sexton, hopefully for most of the season. Even Walker Kessler was sitting out games late in the year. So you got those guys. You got some improvement. If Walker Kessler makes improvements, Ochai Agbaji makes improvements. You're bringing in Taylor Hendricks. Can he be impactful as a rookie? So you're bringing in these guys, and obviously you're getting some guys back who are sitting out during that post-All-Star, lose fest at times. Can they match the 37-45 record? Of course, the thing is, the Jazz are unlikely to have that 10-3 start. This year's team likely ain't going to start 10-3. But I also don't think they're going to be as bad as the team was, after that hot start. Be somewhere in the middle. So do they end up with the exact same record? Roughly between 35 and 39 wins? Or do they end up, severely underperforming or overperforming? I think 40 wins is certainly possible. Of course, that assumes good health, 70-plus games played by pretty much all of your key players. Markkanen, Clarkson, Sexton, Kessler, Olynyk, Collins. And John Collins, he's certainly a wild card here because he's the major addition that you make that post-All-Star team didn't have last year. So I think that there is an improvement from last year's team. The major wild card being, can they get a playmaker? Because losing Mike Conley hurts. So as long as maybe not having a Mike Conley on this team doesn't just absolutely murder the offense, then I think the Jazz can be better than last year. Does it get them into the playoffs? I think it gets them to the play-in. I think the Jazz making the play-in is a very real possibility. We'll just have to see. And it's going to depend on health, because anything goes wrong, what if Lauri Markkanen regresses significantly? I think there's some regression you should expect in his field goal percentage just because it was so historically good that you can't expect that to happen again, at least to the same degree. But what if he severely regresses? Goes like under 20 points per game? That would certainly throw this off. What if Lauri just gets injured? Doesn't have a chance to follow it up? What if John Collins doesn't gel the way we think he might? Or that we're hoping he might? Or any other injuries? Trades. What if the Jazz trade guys and end up starting to tank more? Any of those things could upset, a path to 40 or more wins. but I certainly think it's possible for the Jazz to get there, get to 500 or get dang close to 500. 41 wins gets you a 500 or better record. So it'll be interesting to see, and it'll certainly be interesting to see how the rest of the offseason progresses as the Jazz look to continue to shape their roster. Because you got free agency, got training camp. Trades can obviously still happen. So we'll see how this roster shapes up, and as we get closer to the season, we'll have a much better idea. Just how good is this Jazz team? Just how good can they be with the roster that they're trying to construct for this next season? We're going to take a break, and then we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk about the NBA Summer League. Talked a little bit about the Jazz Summer League and what's going on for them and their roster release, but as more and more rosters are being released for Summer League teams, we're seeing a lot of former Aggies showing up on these Summer League rosters. Now, we could have guessed that a lot of these guys are going to play in the Summer League, but it's pretty much being finalized now. So we'll talk about the at least 4 former Aggies who are going to play in the Summer League. Talk about that next here on the Full Court Press.
Forget the weather this summer with York Home Comfort Systems. Now's your chance to get local rebates, financing options, and industry-leading manufactured-back warranties on your new home comfort system. Plus, you can get up to $2,000 in tax credits with IRA 25C federal tax credit. Installing a York Home Comfort System's even more affordable. Maximize your savings and forget the weather this summer. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning Showroom is west of DI. Online at advancedheating-ac.com.
Experience Sunday brunch at Prodigy Brewing on Center Street. Churro French toast, beignets and berries, and everyone's favorite chilaquiles. A delicious combination of eggs, house-made enchilada sauce, tortilla chips, avocado, and pico. Brunch has an all-new meaning of tasty when you visit Prodigy Brewing. Served Sundays 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Prodigy's atmosphere is vibrant, energetic, and friendly. Whether it's with family or friends, Sunday brunch at Prodigy Brewing is a delicious experience. Prodigy Brewing, exceptional food, extraordinary service, and family-friendly on Center Street in downtown Logan.
The entire staff at DD Auto and Salvage wish you a happy 4th of July and amazing summer. DD Auto and Salvage love helping you clean it up by paying you top dollar for junker autos and scrap metal. Bring your automobiles and metal to 1976 West, 200 North on Valley View Highway and get cash today. Vehicle pickup is available with appointment. Call DD Auto and Salvage, 787-1204. That's 787-1204 today. See store for details.
Hello, I'm Zane Johnson, personal banker and operations manager at Cache Valley Bank. With nearly a decade of banking experience, I enjoy meeting new people and helping them with their banking needs. I have a reliable team who demonstrate the personalized attention and exceptional service you deserve. Come visit the Smithfield branch and ask for Zane, or give me a call to see what opening an account with Cache Valley Bank can do for you. I look forward to meeting you. Hablo Español, Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
This is Ryan at My Mattress. We have some surprising but awesome news to announce. Purple, the rocket ship in the mattress industry, has purchased IntelliBed, the best mattress in the industry. We could not be more excited. The beds have yet to arrive, but we flew out with Purple, and seriously, this new IntelliBed Purple lineup, it is immaculate. We have the whole Purple lineup and the IntelliBed Purple lineup. Isn't it time to sleep exceptionally? Only at My Mattress, now partnered with IntelliBed Purple.
When it comes to home care, it's important to know you have a choice. If you or a loved one is in need of hospice or home health services, remember that Primrose Home Care and Hospice believes in treating the patient as well as the problem. We work directly with you and your doctor to create a health plan that's catered to your needs. Our team is devoted to providing options in the freedom and safety of your own home. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call to schedule a free consultation. Primrose Home Care and Hospice, your local hospice and home health provider since 2006.
The Doug Gottlieb Show.
Is there a doctor here?
Listen.
If he's going to be a backup, that's fine. If they're going to get another dude who can create shots, fine. What? Chris Paul is a shell of his previous self. And oh yeah, by the way, in his prime, he got hurt in key situations. Now, after his prime, he's getting hurt every year at this time of year.
The Doug Gottlieb Show.
Weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan. Northern Utah and Southern Idaho's home for sports. It's the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
was looking at my weather app the other day. I've been enjoying some nice, cool, still spring temperatures, even though we're technically in summer. But then I saw it's going to get a lot hotter as we head into the weekend. And as that weather gets here, it's a reminder that it's more important than ever to keep your car in tip-top shape. You can get your oil changed at Valvoline Instant Oil Change. They're across from Angie's on Main Street in Logan. They've got the Valvoline Synthetic and Valvoline Max Life. It's the oil that your vehicle loves. So if you need your oil change, I'm not due for one now, but like I said, keep your car in tip-top shape. So, switching gears from Jazz free agency, Jazz trades, Jordan Clarkson opting into his player option, going to spend at least one more year, could maybe look into signing an extension with the Jazz or maybe even an opt-in and trade. We're going to have to just wait and see exactly what the Jazz are trying to do here with their roster. They have too many players on their roster. They're going to have to cut some by October, but obviously they can wait until then. But they can also open up some more, cap room for free agents if they decide to chase after them. But we're shifting gears from that into talking a little bit about the NBA Summer League. Summer League games are going to begin on July 3rd. You've got kind of showcase Summer Leagues in Sacramento and in Salt Lake City. They're going to have games on like July 3rd, 5th, and 6th, I believe, in both cases. I think the Salt Lake City Summer League, they play 3 games. Each team that participates plays 3 games. And in Sacramento, I think they only play 2 games. But we're going to see players, with local ties in both of those. Obviously, with Salt Lake City, they all end up having local ties because they're all, Jazz players involved in the Jazz organization. In kind of on news in the Salt Lake City Summer League, they released their rosters, and I was kind of keeping an eye on it because when I was listening to the press conference where they were introducing Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, and Bryce Sensabaugh, they ended up asking questions of Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks, about injuries that they'd had. Sensabaugh had like a knee injury, and Taylor Hendricks had had a minor hamstring injury. And for Hendricks, it had kept him from working out with the Jazz. Because he'd just been injured. There was mutual interest in doing a workout, but, injuries kept him from being able to do that. So is Hendricks going to be able to play in the Summer League? And he said he was hopeful. But the news came out that both those guys, both Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks, missed or were held out of Jazz Summer League practice. And it potentially could lead to them not playing in the Summer League, despite in at least the Salt Lake City Summer League and maybe even the Vegas one. Which is pretty frustrating because the whole draw of Summer League for a lot of players is seeing these draft picks, in a context of, they're still a leader on the team. They're playing a little bit tougher competition, but they're playing with the organization, that drafted them. But they're still getting to see them in a context where they're the best player on the team usually. It's like for the Jazz, the players that you're wanting to pay attention to the most on the Summer League roster are Taylor Hendricks, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Keontae George. 2 of those may not end up playing. 2 of the 3 big reasons you might want to watch this team may not end up playing. And it's really frustrating. And I'm really hoping, and I kind of speculated about this on social media, I speculate, do they do that to maybe try and draw more people to buy tickets? Like, hey, they're on the roster. Buy tickets, they're going to play. And then the next day, they're held out of practice. I don't think we know their status for all of the games. And maybe just being held out of practice is a precaution. Because you want to exercise caution. I don't want to say that the practice of holding guys out of Summer League, to help on injuries is a bad practice. Because obviously you don't want them to re-aggravate an injury during a Summer League game. Because then that removes, development in actual NBA games. But I really hope they weren't being dishonest there, trying to sell more tickets to the Salt Lake Summer League. I just hope that that's not what they were thinking. Hope it's just a coincidence. So that's kind of the news on the Jazz front. But as I kept teasing in the last segment of the start of the show, 4 former Aggies will participate in the Summer League. I believe they're pretty much all on officially released rosters. And the 4 players in question are Taylor Funk, who we learned pretty quickly after the draft signed with the Miami Heat Summer League team. You have Neemias Queta, who spent 2 years as a two-way player for the Sacramento Kings. And actually today, news for Neemias Queta is the qualifying offer. There was a deadline for the Kings to either extend a qualifying offer to Neemias Queta or, I guess, waive him. The Kings extended that qualifying offer to Neemias Queta, so the Kings are either going to sign him to another contract, probably another two-way contract, or maybe somebody can go after him in restricted free agency, because right now, Queta is a restricted free agent. But he's going to play for the Kings Summer League team. Sam Merrill, he's on a non-guaranteed contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was a 3-year deal. It extended through last year, and he has 2 more years on his deal. It's like a 3-year, $5 million, but this year and next year, which is about $1 to $2 million each year. I actually think it's just about $2 million. I think it's $1.9 million this year and like $2.1 million next year. But they're both non-guaranteed, so Merrill could be waived at any time. So he's on thin ice, but he's going to play with the Summer League team. He spent a lot of last year playing for Cleveland's G League team, played pretty well. And so he's going to play in the Summer League this year for Cleveland. The last Aggie that's going to participate in the Summer League is Justin Bean. Justin Bean spent pretty much all of last year with the Memphis Hustle. He's moving from Memphis, and obviously that's the Memphis Grizzlies G League team. He's going to be playing for the Boston Celtics Summer League team, potentially playing to maybe be on the Celtics G League affiliate, the Maine Celtics. So another spot in New England area. So that's 4 different Aggies who are going to be participating in the Summer League. And actually, Taylor Funk is going to be at the California Summer League, which means he'll actually play against Neemias Queta, presuming they both appear in those games. On, July 5th, it'll actually be on ESPN. 8 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN, Heat against the Kings in the California Classic Summer League. Taylor Funk against Neemias Queta. They're obviously never teammates, but they'll play against each other, both as former Aggies. There is another matchup between former Aggies. It'll be in the Las Vegas Summer League. This game will be on NBA TV. It'll be July 8th, 1 p.m. Mountain Time. The Heat against the Celtics, which would presumably feature Taylor Funk against Justin Bean. Again, never teammates, only miss each other by a year. But 2 former Aggies going against each other, and may end up seeing them matched up against each other. They both play pretty much the same position. And we can see some one-on-one Taylor Funk against Justin Bean. We'll have to see how that goes. So that's just a look at the Summer League. And, of course, when you look at these guys playing in the Summer League, you try and think how many of these guys can get, on NBA rosters. Well, the answer is Sam Merrill, assuming he doesn't get waived, he's likely to end up with the Cleveland Cavaliers, likely to end up playing for the G League team again. Maybe he gets a shot on their, full-time roster. Of course, his contract, again, unless he's waived, has him on the Cavaliers' full-time roster, which is unlike Neemias Queta, who's on a 2-way contract. So Queta can only sometimes spend time on the full-time roster, can only sometimes will actually dress for the Sacramento Kings and be on the bench and eligible to play in games. Sam Merrill actually has a contract with the full-time Cavaliers roster. Taylor Funk and Justin Bean, they're both fighting for likely just 2-way contracts or spots on a G League team. Neither of them have guarantees to end up in any NBA organization. They're not guaranteed to end up with a G League team. That's certainly a possibility, but there's no guarantees. In this Summer League, they're playing for their, likely NBA career, especially Justin Bean. He spent some time bouncing between organizations, and, if he loses out another chance, then that could be the end of his NBA career. Taylor Funk, he's just beginning. He's going to try and find a landing spot. Maybe he can find some, the fact that he's a 6'8" shooting forward. A lot of times you can find some kind of niche to play in. Maybe he's not quite NBA material, but there have been players that we don't think they're NBA material, and then they end up actually being NBA players. So we'll see how that goes. In the end, I would expect Sam Merrill and Neemias Queta to end up with some NBA club. Either with a G League team, or on a two-way contract. For Justin Bean and Taylor Funk, probably an outside shot. But at least they have a shot. And it's nice to see so many former Aggies playing in the Summer League at the same time. And it's kind of showing the quality of players that we're seeing come out of Utah State. You got more and more players. Maybe they're not making their mark in the NBA. But the Aggies are putting more and more players into the pros. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, talk a little bit about Utah State football. Bit of a snapshot of their offense, how things kind of stand right now, how things may end up looking going into fall camp. Kind of just going over what I wrote in my article for CashValleyDaily.com, which was published early this morning. So we'll talk about that next here on the Full Court Press.
This is Jay with Daryl's Appliance. Daryl's is hosting an Independence Day event like no other. Save up to 30% on selected appliances. That includes Whirlpool, Maytag, GE, and more. Double dip and save even more with Daryl's exclusive mail-in rebates of up to $600 on select appliance packages. Apply for 12 months interest-free financing, plus you get Daryl's famous service after the sale. Daryl's Appliance Service and Sales Independence Day event, west on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
Hi, this is Jay Broadbent. If you use a CPAP, need a walker or a wheelchair, or just need some assistance around your home, then this announcement's for you. Alpine Home Medical is opening a new store in Tooele. We're planning on opening our doors this summer. Check us out on social media at AlpineHME or alpinehomemedical.com to stay up to date.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Copiers, printers, service, and supplies are just the beginning. Les Olson IT is the premier source for your business's structured cabling, IT, software, telephones, and security systems. We partner with you to find the ideal solution to all of your office technology needs. Tell us your goals and we'll get you there. Find out more at lesolson.com.
Les Olson IT.
Girls, us guys are always trying to score some brownie points, but we need all the help we can get. So dropping some subtle hints is helpful, such as your favorite food is Italian, you love the color green, and you want the ring from Jarek's Fine Jewelry, the place with the bright green cars on 930 North Main Street. Okay, so it might not be so subtle, but that's okay. Remember, we need the help. Make it special, make it Jarek's. Now remember, just tell him it's the place with the bright green cars.
On July 8th, one of the largest, best supported, and beautiful bike events is in your backyard. The Cash Grand Fondo. Are you ready? The perfect local event to challenge yourself on a 35, 50, 75, or 100-mile course. All entries come with a meal, big finisher medals, and cool rider gifts. Join the Cash Grand Fondo July 8th for the best bike event in the West. To sign up, go to cashgrandfondo.com or Google Cash Grand Fondo.
Summer's here, and JM Mechanical knows 90-plus degree days will take over, and you will be screaming for a cool home. JM Mechanical is here to help. JM Mechanical knows how to fix, tune up, or replace every type of heating or air conditioning brand. Fast 24-hour heating service is available in Box Elder, Cache, and Franklin County with a 100% satisfaction guarantee and upfront pricing. Call JM Mechanical at 563-6267. That's 563-6267.
The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Welcome back, Full Court Press. Jason Walker here. You want to text into the show, 435-339-0321. So I wrote and had published today just kind of a snapshot of Utah State football and how their offense is looking right now. You know, how are things looking like in the offseason? What's their, position strength, for different position groups, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. I gave average, above average, below average grades for each of these. Detail, what some national prognostications are and some details. Kind of extensive, certainly on quarterbacks. I wrote quite a bit about the quarterbacks. But just with each position group, how do they look? If you guys want to text in, again, 435-339-0321. Text into the Full Court Press. And starting with quarterbacks, and this is the position group that I felt it was the most clear. Every other position group, it's fuzzy. Not 100% sure who's going to play at all these positions. Especially at running back, that's the one that's the fuzziest. An offensive line, there's a few questions. And wide receiver, kind of narrow it down, although it is still a bit fuzzy. But with quarterback, we know who's going to start, barring an enormous surprise. Cooper Legas is going to start week 1. And as long as he's healthy, he should retain the starting quarterback job, just as he did for every game after Logan Bonner went down. Cooper Legas was always a starting quarterback. And it'll be that way going forward for the Aggies. So the question is, how good can Cooper Legas be? And that's where this, positional strength question comes in. And my thing is, I think it's going to be average, with maybe some potential to be above average. Because last year, if you look at the games where, and it's kind of fuzzy when you look at his stats, because he had, I think it was 8 starts, but in 2 of them, he didn't play the whole game. Like Colorado State and Memphis, he got knocked out halfway through the game. He got knocked out really early in the Colorado State game. I think second quarter in the Colorado State game, and then third quarter in the Memphis game. So he didn't complete those games, so his per game numbers, even if you isolate it to just starts, gets a bit fuzzy. When I isolated basically 6 full game starts, you look at Cooper Legas, his averages, he averaged 223 yards per game, 62.2% completion percentage, and a 10-7 touchdown to interception ratio. That would have put him, if you took that average and completion percentage and compared it to the NCAA leaderboards for the entire season, he would have ranked 56th in passing yards per game, 62nd in completion percentage. So about average, which is about where I graded this position strength. I think it's about average. If nothing else, Utah State should have a decent quarterback. Guy who can be a dual threat, get some yards with his legs, get a couple of first downs, as long as he stays healthy when he does that running. Utah State should have a decent quarterback. Of course, Utah State's potential could end up being locked behind Cooper Legas' development. If he develops a significant amount, then the offense can go into overdrive. They can become so much better if Cooper Legas improves. Because right now, he's a little too turnover prone, misses a few too many passes. He's generally accurate, but he misses a few too passes and just has some bad passes at bad times. He's also not super aggressive outside of times when he gets a free play. When he gets a free play, Utah State, their offense tends to generate a few free plays off hard counts and hurry-ups and things like that. They seem to do it pretty frequently. or, illegal substitution free plays, catching defenders running off the field, Cooper Legal will be aggressive as heck, and some of his best throws actually come in those situations because he just plays with no fear and just slings it in there somewhere. But, he doesn't play that like that normally. He's often super conservative, which is weird considering he still is turnover prone even when he's playing somewhat conservative. So with quarterback right now, seems like they're kind of average. Potential for more, but it all comes down to Cooper Legal. It's a one-man position group pretty much. Because pretty much only one quarterback's playing at a time for the most part. Now, running back, this is one where I began by saying average, maybe even above average, and then I switched it to below average. And Phil Steele and Athlon, Phil Steele ranked Utah State's running backs 10th out of the 12 teams in the Mountain West, which I thought was a little low. Like I said, initially I was thinking average, maybe below average, compared to the Mountain West. And the main thing is I kind of like Robert Briggs, but I'm just not sure how he's going to handle a full-time workload because he averaged 4.8 yards per carry last season. And there were times where I was constantly whining about how Robert Briggs wasn't getting more carries. And Calvin Tyler did well. He ended up being a 1,000-yard rusher, but a lot of that was just on a lot of volume relative to a lot of other running backs that have had 1,000-yard seasons recently for the Aggies, or within the last 10 or so years. So even though I really liked Robert Briggs, I thought he should have gotten more carries. I don't know if he's going to be able to handle the full-time workload or if he's going to be able to stay healthy. Dude's 5'6", 5'7"? He's short. He's not big. He runs big. He runs with power despite his size, but that takes a toll. So I'm not sure if he can even stay healthy over the course of the season, and I'm not 100% sure he can take on the workload. But maybe he can. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been optimistic on Robert Briggs before. Maybe I'm just being a little pessimistic right now. But even aside from Briggs, you've got Davon Booth. He was taking first-team snaps in spring ball. He seems to be the clear backup. You've also got Razul Faison, I think it's how you say it. He's a 6'2", 215, big bruiser type size. He comes out of Snow College. I should mention Davon Booth, he averaged 144 yards per game for Cerritos last season, JUCO team. Faison, he wasn't a super productive. I think he was the second or third leading rusher for Snow College. But again, he could be maybe he jumps into the fray, ends up being a big back, maybe he kind of breaks out. But at the very least, he could maybe be a goal line back. Of course, the new name to add to this list, and this came in the last couple of days. Had to add this paragraph kind of last minute in my article where I talk about Sione Finau. He spent 4 years at BYU, and I think somehow he's only a junior now. But he's a former 3-star recruit. He said spent time with the Cougars. Limited carries for the most part outside of the 2019 season. He actually averaged 6.1 yards per attempt in the 2019 season. Carried the ball 59 times, 359 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Tyler Algier, I can never say his name right. The BYU guy who ended up, going to the NFL. Now he's with the Falcons, I believe. He ended up taking over the starting job and pushed Finau out of the rotation pretty much. So Finau's now looking for a new spot. Maybe he jumps in, takes over the spot. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. So he's got good size. More than Davon Booth and Robert Briggs. So maybe he comes in and steals the spot. Who knows? But the end-all be-all is that Utah State's running backs are an unknown commodity. We can like the potential of any and all of the running backs, but we don't know. That's part of why I say below average. There's nobody here that's going to make you quick in your boots that you're afraid of. But it's only going to take one of these guys to break out for everyone, including myself, to change our minds about the Utah State running game. But anyway, got to take another quick break. On the other side, we'll go over wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line. We'll close out the show here on the Full Court Press.
Advanced Fireplace and Stove wants to thank you for voting them 2 years running the gold medal winners in the Best of Northern Utah contest. With over 35 display models in their showroom, their goal is to make the process of making your home comfortable and cozy an easy experience. With premier brands like Napoleon and Dimplex, they have something for every style, every home, every budget. Building or renovating, they've got you covered. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, where comfort is their business.
Elements has delicious lunch specials. Soup, salad, and bread for just $10 is tasty and quick. Elements lunch menu is full of scrumptious items. Wood-fired pizzas are an excellent choice that include barbecued chicken and the bee's knees. The fresh battered halibut fish and chips with seasoned fries is always a hit. And don't forget the fan favorite, Chipotle fried chicken sandwich. Thursdays, enjoy Elements house-made smoked brisket, casual or professional. Open Monday through Thursday, 11:30 to 8 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11:30 to 9. Visit theelementsrestaurant.com for reservations.
For more than a century, couples have shopped at S.E. Needham Jewelers. Known for a large selection of beautiful diamonds, we now have both natural and lab-grown diamonds. You are sure to find a diamond engagement ring that will fit your budget. The possibilities today are endless as you select the perfect ring. Show her you'll cherish her forever with a diamond, either natural or lab-grown, from the store where Utah gets engaged. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
The Al Sporting Goods 4th of July celebration is happening now. Summer sizzling deals are here and the prices are lower than ever. Over 5,000 kayaks in stock. No marts, no e-stores. Nobody local beats Al's prices or selection. Trampolines $279. Lawn games like spike ball, can jam, and cross net all on sale. Bike tailgate pads $59. Kids camp chairs $9.99. Lifetime coolers $94.99. Baseball, golf, cycling. Al's has you covered at the 4th of July sale. Al's Sporting Goods. Every sports, every season.
When a tiny drop causes a ripple and becomes a wave, it travels through all corners of the planet, sustains all forms of life, and provides streams of wonder, rivers of adventure, and oceans of discovery. One drop connects us all. Reserve your visit now to Loveland Living Planet Aquarium, a nonprofit organization.
Summer is finally here. How do you protect your eyes from the sun? Crystal Vision, a Best of Northern Utah 2-time gold medalist, can build prescription sunglasses that match your style and feel. Crystal Vision sunglasses are perfect for golf, a drive in the car, watching ball games, or when you're out for a walk. Whatever your activity, their prescription sunglasses are made from the highest quality materials and components and feature interesting styles and lens colors. Your sunglasses will feel like they were made for you. Crystal Vision. Online at crystalvision.com.
Talking the sports you care about. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
And here we are, our final segment of the Full Court Press. Thank you so much for listening. So far, we'll close it out. Talking about Utah State football. Again, article published on CashValleyDaily.com, giving a snapshot of the offense. We'll be having more on the defense and special teams in the coming days and weeks, including an article detailing what's coming next for Utah State men's basketball players, or, former, basically the four that we talked about today that are playing in the Summer League. But just going over kind of the last two position groups, went over quarterbacks and running backs in the last segment. With wide receivers, it's a position group I'm most optimistic about. Love the guys. Terrell Vaughn coming back, he's the guy that's getting, preseason Mountain West, first team or second team, depending on who you ask. He's the guy that should be very productive. I think 600-700 yards, 7-8 touchdowns. He can be a really productive guy. Touchdowns could vary depending on how they use them in the red zone. Slot receivers and touchdowns is kind of interesting prospect, but he's the guy that could be really productive. And then behind him, it's hard to predict who's going to be the number 2 or 3 guys, but there's like 5 players that you can predict will be in that conversation. Otto Tia, Colby Bowman, Kyrese Rowan, Micah Davis. Just so many different guys that you're not sure who's going to make that step, but they're all talented enough that somebody in this offense is going to come in, step up, play well, and you're going to have a solid 1-2 punch at wide receiver, maybe even 3 or 4 deep. Like if multiple receivers step up to the plate, going to end up with some good wide receivers, some good, diverse talent among the wide receiver groups. Speed, size, quickness, you got it all. At tight end, it's kind of a question just because, don't know how much they're actually going to use their tight ends. Blake Anderson keeps talking the talk about using the tight ends. There's certainly some signs. With spring ball, they were using Brock Lane in some more creative ways, splitting him out as a wide out, potentially using him in more versatile ways. You could split him out in one play, bring him in, play the more traditional tight end lineup. Of course, Josh Sturzer was out, and so he's kind of the presumed starter. So we're not sure how that position battle is going to come out, whether Brock Lane or Josh Sturzer comes out on top. So that one where there's still some question marks. Then offensive line, it's the one that I probably am least confident in right now, just because I haven't had a chance to see it. You got 3 guys that are returning, that are 2 guys stepping into new starting roles, 1 starter returning, 2 unknown positions at left tackle and right guard. Kind of hard to see exactly what happens there. And I'm not sure there's going to be any dominant players on the offensive line, so a little bearish on them. But that's it for today's show. Eric Frandsen will be back tomorrow, so we'll continue the conversation then.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. Major League Baseball has seen an influx of offense this season, but that didn't stop the Yankee pitcher Domingo Germán Wednesday night. He retired 27 consecutive batters on his way to just the 24th perfect game in baseball history. A rare feat, first of its kind since Felix Hernandez in 2012. The only problem? No one was there to see it. The A's are the worst team in baseball, ranked dead last in attendance. The game was held at 9:40 Eastern. The combination created minimal viewers for one of baseball's greatest accomplishments. The lack of attention is disappointing considering the outcome, but that doesn't diminish the pitcher's accomplishment. There have been over 300 no-hitters in Major League Baseball history, but perfection, that's rare. Baseball's a game of failure. A Hall of Fame career is 3 hits for every 10 at-bats, and when you consider baseball enacted multiple rule changes in order to promote more offense this season, Domingo Germán's perfect night is much more impressive. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.